Good evening again. I'm Lucy Arish. This is the evening edition, and this is the Daily Debate. France and Mexico are angrily demanding explanations from the United States following recently leaked spying allegations. At the same time, Saudi Arabia royal family voiced their disappointment over U.S. President Barack Obama's policies on Iran and Syria, which could potentially bring the alliance between the United States and Saudi Arabia to its lowest point in years. And joining me tonight to discuss these American diplomatic problems are Mr. Owen Alterman and Azriel Bermant, both researchers at the Institute for National Security Study. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming to our studio. What is Barack Obama doing, Owen?
Well, I feel bad for the guy. He just gets over this big crisis and government shutdown in the United States, and now he has a new crisis of the opening of the healthcare exchanges and the problems with the website, and now he has to deal with this whole complex of foreign policy issues. To start with the NSA, I think that's frankly the least troubling. No one should be surprised that spying agencies are spying. Of course, the French have to come out and condemn it for their domestic audience. The Mexicans the same, as the Brazilians have done. But at the end of the day, I think this is a short-term blip, and the U.S. will be able to move on with all these countries. As for the Saudis, it's potentially more serious. But even there, I think these are two countries that have a lot to gain by working together, have a lot of common interests. And the U.S. will have to coordinate with the Saudis as it deals with Iran, just as the U.S. will need to with Israel. But in the end, I think that the relationship will survive this as well.
This is not the first time that we are hearing that President Barack Obama has failed in his foreign policy, foreign administration that he's dealing in the United States, that he's not doing a very good job there.
Well, first of all, they're the loud voices which want to take advantage of any problems he has on the Republican side, which is what one would expect. I mean, the trouble is Obama has on occasions been very hesitant, for example, with Syria. This is, but on the other hand, he had a bit of help from the Russians with the chemical weapons deal. But it just so happened, maybe he had some luck on his side there, but he actually did well there because, in fact, so far the deal has led, the destruction of chemical weapons has started now, and it's something that no one else has ever done, destroying chemical weapons in a country torn apart by civil war.
Did he did well because he made such big promises about the world not willing to stay quiet about the use of chemical weapons. He built up such high hopes that the Americans will eventually come and save the situation in Syria, and he didn't. And he's not doing it for the first time. He's actually doing it for several times. That lately, actually, maybe we can say that his foreign policy is not working, or something. He's doing something wrong. Let's put it out there.
Well, he already won his Nobel Prize, so he doesn't need to worry.
For peace, but he didn't bring any peace. This is exactly the problem.
Well, I mean, I think that you've just hit on the issue. Look, we'll have to see how the chemical weapons issue turns out, whether it's something that will ultimately, whether the weapons will be destroyed, and whether that will ultimately, the taboo on using chemical weapons will be reestablished. But again, going back to the Saudi issue, for the Saudis, the key interest is not the chemical weapons. The key interest is the geopolitical issue, helping the Sunnis of Syria, helping to give Iran, to hand a defeat to Iran, and helping to strengthen Saudi Arabia's presence and influence in the Levant. And these are issues that go far beyond the chemical weapons issue. These are issues that would have been dealt with a U.S. intervention in Syria, but won't be dealt with if the only issue that's being addressed is the chemical weapons issue. That said, of course, the U.S. has other considerations, and Obama also has his domestic politics to worry about. We saw a month and a half ago, we talked about it in this room, how much domestic opposition there was in the U.S. to any intervention in Syria. And I think the administration understands in the big picture that it's doing, all things considered, what it needs to be doing in terms of its own politics and in terms of U.S. National interests. So but of course, there will be some friction with the Saudis over.
Let's go back and try to see what is he doing wrong, and try to compare him to Bush, to George W. Bush Jr., and to Clinton. Their foreign policy was more out there than Barack Obama's.
Well, history will judge after Obama's final term in office. But so far, I mean, now we have talks going. For example, we're talking about the Saudis. There are three issues they're upset about. One is Syria, as Owen mentioned. The second is Iran. that the United States is now talking to the Iranians, and they're worried that, as Israel is, that they may come to some very bad deal, which could enable Iran to get a nuclear weapon in its own time, while being free of the sanctions. And the third thing, of course, is the Arab-Israel situation with Saudi Arabia saying nothing's being done about it. Of course, right now, talks are going on between Israel and the Palestinians. We don't exactly know what's happening. So Obama's doing what Clinton did before, and of course Bush, we had the Annapolis. He can't be any worse. He can't do any worse than I mean, of course, Clinton, and with Clinton, at the end of the day, the Oslo process happened. It wasn't the United States so much. It was other channels. I think so far we have to say that the jury is out, but there have been. I mean, the Iran opening was something which I think Obama had to pursue, and as the question is, what's going to happen in the next round of talks? There will be problems with the Saudis. This isn't a problem that's going to go away anytime soon.
So what is, we've been talking about the Saudi Arabians, and what is happening in Saudi Arabia is actually when we've been talking about maybe certain cooperation between Israel and the Saudi Arabians, because they're seeing the Iran problem at the same eye, and they're finding themselves actually confronting the United States in this issue.
Well, confronting may be a strong word, at least I hope it is. But it's true that Israel and the Saudis have common interest in the Iranian issue, and in many ways much more of a common interest than does the U.S. because of our geography and because, you know, the ultimate Iranian potential targets are our countries. And so, of course, we're going to be coordinating. And that's where it's interesting, of course, to watch the Saudis, as Azriel said, in their public statements, list 3 issues that are bothering them, one being Syria, which they talk a fair amount about, the other being Iran, which they, as always, talk a fair amount about, and the third being this mention about the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, which I'm sure, all things being equal, they would like to see advanced and they would like to see, you know, the issue resolved. But I think the feeling, at least here in Israel, is that's by far the less important of the 3, and that the Saudis really, that there is this, we see reports of more and more cooperation, or at least coordination between the 2 countries.
So in a case that the United States is actually finding a lot of, or making a lot of problem with her foreign policy, who can actually seize the moment? Who actually can capture this moment and maybe try to be the other big nation who has better foreign policy than the United States? Because we saw that Russia is actually trying to take the place of the big negotiator and the big problem solver in this region. What do you think?
Well, again, that may be, but the Russians also have, you know, aroused a fair amount of suspicion here among a lot of these countries. The Chinese still remain less active in the Middle East, and that's part of their general perception and general reluctance to get involved in political conflicts far away from home. But again, I mean, the most striking development, I think, of the last few weeks has been this nascent alliance. That may be too strong a word, but this nascent coordination and improvement of relations between Israel and the Gulf. This is something that's been under the radar screen for a long time, but by all reports in the last few weeks, it's something that's been stepped up and upgraded, and that's a very interesting development. And it's something that really bears watching. Could this type of coordination somehow evolve into something else, and something we really haven't seen in the Middle East ever?
So let's talk, turn this conversation about what is happening in Pakistan. Obama talked today with the president of Pakistan, and actually he's been criticized a lot about the drone attacks over Pakistan. Where is it going, the situation there?
Well, there are a number of problems with the United States and Pakistan. I mean, the relations were pretty awful, and there have been efforts to try and restore the situation. The drone attacks have actually declined somewhat in the last year or so, but there's a great problem with the United States acting on its soil in terms of domestic public opinion in Pakistan. It's very damaging for the government. But the trouble is that within Pakistan itself, you have a very strong Islamist, you have various organizations that carry out attacks, and Nawaz Sharif himself has sometimes been taking a very soft approach towards extremism within Pakistan, and the trouble is that with the United States, their problem with Pakistan is that the intelligence services there have been sometimes collaborated with the Taliban and other extreme organizations, and there's this sort of double act going on. And I think there's a lot of suspicion on both sides. Pakistan are happy about the drone strikes, the United States isn't happy about this sort of the ISI playing a double game. And it's going to require a lot of effort to try and improve the situation. Of course, you've got the other thing which has been happening is there's a lot of tensions between India and Pakistan have ratcheted up recently in Kashmir. And that's another problem which needs one to watch very carefully.
So if we're looking at the problems that Obama is facing, what is the, and he's facing a lot of problems, I have to say, lately, what is the first important problem, the first step and significant step that he has to do in order to, let's say, mellow the criticism that the world is putting on him right now?
Well, I think a lot of it rides on how these Iranian talks develop. We have to see how the talks develop and how the West responds to what the Iranians have put on the table. And I think to the extent that Obama's priority is shoring up his relations with Israel, with Egypt, Jordan, with the Gulf states, I think he'll just need to, to increase his confidence and our confidence, or these countries' confidence in him, by showing that he won't be making, as Azriel said, a bad deal. And I don't know that that's something that can be done in a day or 2 days, but it is something that can be done over the course of the coming weeks. And I think once Obama regains the confidence of these governments, that he's not going to cave into Iranian demands, that he will have red lines that he won't back down from, and that he really is serious about putting severe limits on Iran's capacity to break out to a nuclear weapon, I think he'll regain the confidence of these countries. I personally think that that's where this whole issue is headed, and I think, and I hope that that's the case.
And in the end of the day, let's try to think 3 years from now, at the end of his administration, what will be remembered in his foreign policy, if there will be something to remember from it?
Well, one thing that everyone will remember is Osama bin Laden. And after all, the Bush administration failed to capture him. I mean, Barack Obama managed it. So that's one thing that will definitely be remembered. Also, his efforts to woo the Arab world, the Muslim world, so far with very mixed results. But let's see what he achieves now with Israel and the Palestinians. If he can pull off an improbable, a highly improbable agreement, then that would be a huge.
You mentioned the Nobel Prize that he got, and he got a Nobel Prize for peace, but he didn't win it. Is it going to be one of his, maybe the pressure that we're seeing from John Kerry on the Israelis and the Palestinians, is it one of his goals to actually justify this Nobel Prize? Well,
it seems that impetus is coming more from Kerry than from Obama, but we'll have to see. I mean, I think all U.S. presidents would like to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We've seen that going back several presidents, going back decades, so there's nothing unusual about that. Going back to your excellent question about what Obama will be remembered for, I think in the big picture he'll be remembered for managing, I think up till now on the whole managing American decline. Not that the United States is in precipitous decline, but there are rising powers in Asia. The U.S. has significant debts and economic uncertainties at home. And what Obama will be remembered for doing is ending 2 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, trying to shift U.S. military presence to Asia and managing that process. And I think also at the same time, as Azriel said, protecting what he views as U.S. core interests in fighting terrorism and in fighting the Taliban and al-Qaeda.
So I think that we will have to see in 3 years, but we will have you even before the 3 years, before he will finish his administration. Owen Alterman, thank you very much for coming, and Dr. Azriel Bermant, thank you very much for coming to our studio. And we're going out for a small break, 10 minutes break, an update from our news desk, and then I am back again for the I-24 News One-on-One. Don't go anywhere. I swear I'm coming back.